Yes, hello guys. So this is a video to give you some tips, some do's and don'ts regarding essay one for English 103. So let's go to share screen and just make sure. Yeah, okay. Let's go to share screen. And so I'm going to give you two examples. One that got an A plus actually, and the other that was more C range. And so let's look at the A plus first. Let me actually get my highlighter. All right. So let's see here. Okay. Now, first of all, so this is my process. I look at an essay, and so the first thing I do is look at stuff like the page length and also the citation. So just scrolling through. Now, notice I did eliminate the student info, that's at the top. Actually, if you look at, I did keep it in for the one that got the grade of a C. And yeah, so yeah, you should have that in the upper left corner. Obviously, I eliminated the names. And yeah, just make sure it's more aligned. I think this student is like tabbing, and you don't want to do that. Just have it flush with the left margin. But yeah, just have that for on only the first page. You don't do that on every single page. Okay. And let's see here. Okay. So first of all, yeah, create like an interesting title that grabs the attention of the reader. In this case, this writer definitely did that. It doesn't have to be that long as well, but it just gives, it offers a certain attitude that the paper will have. Okay, so I'm just kind of scrolling through, just looking at, okay, so clearly page length is not an issue. The student is cleared 3 pages and actually has gone really kind of above and beyond it. I mean, this actually would be a very solidly lengthy paper for the research paper. So the student has about almost 8 pages. And I think the stipulation is supposed to be like 3 to 4, 3 to 5. But basically the minimum, it should be at least 3. So what this shows you is that you can actually stretch beyond the minimum. And that will be fine. If it's quite good, then I'll probably be giving you like an A plus for that. So page length is not an issue, and it actually exceeds, it doesn't just limit itself to just the minimum. And now, as far as the works cited, okay, so one thing is, I guess, yeah, it's for the most part alphabetical order. This was the one outlier that was not in alphabetical order. Obviously, this should be alphabetized like here, right? Aside from that, everything else, like the formatting, the hanging indents, the double spacing, and the overall alphabetical order is very strong. Yeah, like title mechanics, data publication, URL, see all this stuff, guys? Yeah, learn it, live it. All right, make sure that you have that in your own writing. But yeah, aside from that, yeah, all of this. So this is your example of like the poem from the anthology. Yeah, no, very solid, very, very good. Yeah, so you do have that. You do have examples of like essays from websites or maybe scholarly journals. But yeah, and also the student, notice like the consulting sources tip in terms of like the poetry analysis tips that we went over. So clearly, provided that the student's using all of these, is definitely using that consulting sources strategy. Yeah, I say that because, yeah, there's some students where they list a lot of sources, but then they're not really using that. So let's see, like some of the citation, okay, Schweizer, NPAG, right? And that matches up. Schweizer, and obviously, yeah, it's not paginated. So no listing issues going on there. Let's see, what's another one? Yeah, see, now here you have the lines from the poem being cited, right? So you got Hughes's poem, so it's the Weary Blues. Now, Weary Blues should be in quotation marks, okay? So it's not to say that there aren't maybe some errors. I just pointed out two, the alphabetical order for that one source. And then here, okay, poem title, observe the title mechanics, that should be in quotes. But the student in general is doing so much correctly and is really going above and beyond just as far as the work put in, almost 8 pages. So see stuff like when it's that kind of situation, stuff like that, I'm like, okay, I'll turn a blind eye to that. I'm not going to rake you over the coals for that kind of thing. See, I'm noticing also, like you see here, guys, where when you have the quotation marks and then you have the parenthetical citation, so all this is correct, but why have the comma there? Take that comma out of there. See, now here, the student does that correctly. You don't have that there. So again, in the grand scheme of things, I would say that these ultimately are more minor errors. But let's see. But yeah, so you got Hughes, the Weary Blues is being used. Let's see, is there a listing? Yeah, see, there's a listing, Hughes and the Weary Blues. See, sometimes students, they might reference a poem, but they won't list it on the works cited. So remember, guys, you got to do that. And remember, this is a paginated source, so he does point out what page it's on. Again, now here, PP is actually an abbreviation for pages. You actually only have one page, so that actually would be incorrect. You just want to put a P, or actually you could probably just delete that and just have 1098. But yeah, so those are things to watch out for. Let's see here. Okay, so we looked at some of the citation. Yeah, see like Seneca, and then yeah, right there. See, yeah. So just even that, even like a quote, just from a website that has like famous quotes or whatever, the student even followed through with that. So by and large, whatever errors in terms of citation, I would say are very minor, and because the student is doing so much right with citation, yeah, like see here, okay. So, okay, okay. Another thing, yeah, okay, so that should have just the regular quotes. Yeah, so single quotes, yeah, it's got to be the regular quote stuff. And the period should go on the inside. I think actually what I'm showing you here is that despite the fact that, yeah, okay, I mean, there are some errors. Yeah, see here how the poem title, the mechanics are proper. Although the period again, because you don't have a parenthetical reference, that should go on the inside. But again, what you're seeing is that, if you do produce something like this, guys, where it's such a dense development, and you'll see like the focus purpose is very, very specific. It's very unique. So in that respect, I can overlook, some of these errors where, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's probably the student, devoted so much time with the development. And I would say by and large, as far as the writing, it's pretty clean and versatile. And so, with 8 pages, it's kind of like, okay, I kind of see how maybe some things, maybe some little, what I would say in the grand scheme, little details maybe got ignored, like, that should be regular quotes, not single quote, because you don't have a quote within a quote. And then the period should go on the inside. Okay, so, the student's working hard, so I can kind of excuse that. Yeah, see here how the mechanics are proper, right? Period on the outside, nothing here, good to go. Okay, so let's actually I just kind of want to skim through, and with the intro, what I want clearly established is clearly invoking the past, as emblematic through the Harlem Renaissance, and using present day and using an example from present day, And also, like, what is the issue that you're dealing with? Remember with the sample essay previously that we looked at that got the A-B plus. Overall, the focus was very specific on female prostitution in the Black community in, like during the Harlem Renaissance versus today's world. But in the thesis, it didn't really do justice to that. I felt like it was a little bit more generalized where it just said the Black community is struggling, but then it's like, well, what members are struggling, and also like struggling with what kind of struggle? So let's see here. So good attention grabber, and then that leads into addressing the Harlem Renaissance and just kind of giving a little bit of background. Maybe one thing the writer could have done is interacted with the Kelly Mays chapter on the Harlem Renaissance for a little bit more substantiation. But, again, it's like, all right, I mean, the student has like 8 pages and it's supposed to be like 3 to 4, 3 to 5. And so, whatever. Okay, I'm not going to quibble about that. But if it was a paper that was, say, at 2.5 pages or something, or under 3, then I would probably definitely point out that, oh, okay, well, you could have developed this, like using the Kelly Mays chapter. And yeah, so, okay, good, kind of setting that up, addressing an artist from that time period and a specific work by that artist. Okay, so all good, right? Just becomes gray and neutral, right? So just kind of talking about what does life have in store for the African American in a post-slavery world. So I thought, this was reasonably thoughtful in that regard. And then there's a transition, guys. So a clear bridge from setting up the past to setting up the present. And then also citing a specific contemporary poet. And that contemporary poet was dealing with the issue that's being dealt with, lost hope, mounting hardship. And then more specifically, the results of that, the consequences, guys, suicide. So you see this very, very specific. The suicide epidemic among the African American community, talking about that in as kind of invoked, Hughes and the Worry Blues with the musician. There does seem to be some suicidal thoughts, right? Like, I ain't got no one in this world. I don't have any hope. So that's certainly invoked, even if the word suicide is not mentioned, but you do see that there. And then certainly here, very specifically, it talks about very overtly the issue of suicide. So suicide, mental illness, okay, good, I'm there. That's a very specific focus. And okay, so here, it's kind of a little bit copying, like the sample essay, if you look at the thesis of the sample essay, it's a little bit of, like this portion kind of copies that, but I think it kind of pulls away from that. So yeah, but yeah, just be careful, like with the whole, after analyzing this and this, which is kind of a move that the sample essay was making. So just be careful with copying it. I think that here it's unique enough that I can excuse that. All right. But so you have that. And then in the main clause, it is evident that the trend of suicide. So see, I think here again, it's kind of copying the sample essay a little bit, where let's move away from that. Remember in class, I said, why don't you take all this, just say evidently, comma, the trend of suicide, blah, blah, blah is increasing. Yeah. But yeah, so trend of suicide is increasing, still so. Yeah, so very good. Okay, aside from those issues, watch the copying, but by and large, very unique, very good focus. So be careful, notice how, it's not just generally talking about how the African American community is struggling. It's a very specific type of struggle. So very, very good. So all of that, I would say set up, probably give an A-, maybe not a flat A, maybe just a little bit of the minus in there just because of copying. And, just maybe some edits, could be done, but still a definite A range, definite A range. Okay, so basically here, writer's talking about where he blues. And notice how the writer utilizes the poetry tip of analyzing the title. And so that tip is well used here. And then just kind of leapfrogging off of that, looking at some of the lines, right? Picking out some of the words from, the next couple lines. Yeah, so good stuff right there. Talking about the title. And then, yeah, so obviously, sometimes students, they say, oh, well, I'll say everything I want to say about the poem in this one paragraph. It's too much. You don't want to do that. And the writer definitely avoids that trap where he does take the poem and, Worry Blues is a lengthy poem. So certainly, you probably really don't need to deal with a lot of other, I mean, certainly you could, but you don't need to deal with a lot of other different Harlem Renaissance poems. I mean, there's enough there where you just focus on that. But yeah, so he takes that line and then explicates it, analyzes it. Okay, yeah, good, yeah, fine. Right, emotions correlated with suicide. Finally, at the end of the poem, right? So now here he's focusing on the end of the poem. Yeah, so everything, it's focusing on specific aspects of the poem. And yeah, no, but so very good. Okay. And then, yeah, so you notice how he has a few, he's using, it's a compare contrast, right? Past versus present. So he's kind of using a little bit of like a block arrangement type thing, excuse me, where he has the first few paragraphs where it's just dealing with the past, right? No discussion of the present, just dealing with the past. Then he has a transition, and now he's dealing with present day, looking at the contemporary poem. Okay, and again, and I like this, guys, where when you compare contrast, if you can keep it real tight and parallel as far as the structure, like maybe if the first subject, the poem of the past, you're looking at the title, you do that with the poem of the present. So you're doing the same thing here. And or like if you're looking at like an individual or a trend, then just kind of trying to have thematically there be some matchup maybe with the first point that you were addressing. That's really the ideal. Sometimes that's a little hard to do, but that's really kind of the ideal if you could do that. But again, notice I like that. Yeah, he takes, he just kind of like a surgeon, right? He just dissects, he lifts out certain words, okay, and then dissects that. So that's really good. And then he's looking at, so he's talking about the title, and then he looks at the initial stages of the poem, and he's got a quote, he's quoting some lines, so good citation right there. One thing that he should do, though, is to do the forward slashing, indicating the line breaks. I don't know, I don't have that poem memorized, so I'm not sure like where the line breaks would be. Of children of the baby. Let's say maybe just, I don't know if that's correct, but let's say the first line break was here. So the writer should put, the forward slash there. Okay. And say the second, was maybe here, after the comma. Oops. Yeah, excuse me. Probably the line break would be, you'd have the comma and then the line break. So yeah, something like that. Yeah, okay, so yeah, I mean, he could have done that. Again, is that like a major error? Again, because he's doing so much well, it's like, okay, just whatever. Maybe if I have a chat with him, then I'd say, okay, you should have done that, but yeah. Okay, now here, editing, right? Don't you keep the POV third person, he, she, they, it type pronouns. Don't default to first person, I, me, my, we, don't use second person, you. So yeah, get that out of there. Again, I would say that he's not excessive with it. it's a momentary lapse, right? Momentary lapse right there. But yeah, just delete that, and then, you could say, let's see. Why don't you just say here, comma, the use of, I'm not gonna pronounce that, I guess, chromomorphism. Maybe you can delete a little bit of that wordiness. You could just say offers non-human or attaches non-human attributes to people. Yeah, so a little bit of editing, cutting down on the wordiness, the POV shifting, could have been done. Okay, yeah, so he basically, that aside, he's analyzing that. Again, watch out for the passive voice. Okay. And then, so yeah, it seems like he focuses on the early portion, and then there's the halfway point. I haven't read the poem, so I'm not sure if maybe he could have said stanzas, like in stanza 1, in stanza 2 or 3. Again, I'd have to look at the poem, but it's fine. The transitions are clear, and he makes clear reference to beginning, middle, and end. Yeah, see, again, here we have the we see. Let's see here. But you got the poetry analysis. So that's good. Nice sectioning off and focusing on a particular word. Yeah, so there is actually quite a bit of use of the we. Trend of suicide. Now notice how, right, so he's been talking about the past, and then he talks about the present with the present day poem. Then he does some further outside research. This is one thing that the sample essay, the first one we looked at, that you guys did the activity on, it actually, yeah, it was, it didn't really do that. It didn't really, do some outside research on female prostitution, either during the 1920s or during present day. But this student is actually doing that, and corroborates that with citation. So that's really good. Yeah, and then talking about demographics, right? High rate of suicide, and then just talking about causation, right? Just again, just kind of based on what he's been finding out in the research. But this is good. So this offers really good texture, really good layers and substantiation. And yeah, and then again, like a causation. And then he actually brings in one of the sources referenced the George Floyd example, and perhaps possible maybe mental health issues related to that. So he brings that in, he discusses that. Okay, well, I mean, the essay, where are we at? Where are we at? Okay, we're on page 6, but I mean, basically, he continues to do that. And it's, I felt like there was good cohesion, that the paragraphs were quite nicely developed, and there was a good sense of cohesion. It didn't feel scattered. And then, yeah, he has a very thoughtful, it's not some rinky-dink run out of gas or just simply repeat the thesis kind of conclusion. He does a really thoughtful job with that. So again, so I said an A+, guys. An A+ is a 4.3. I might have, just because of maybe some of those editing issues that I pointed out, I might have given, I would still give him an A+, because he's working hard here. But it would probably be more like a 4.1 or 4.2 type of A+, as opposed to 4.3. But yeah, so there you have that, guys. Now let's take a look at an essay that got a grade of a C. Okay, so just first of all, okay, formatting generally is fine, and the student has the headers, although the student should have put the page number as well. But that, on this should be flush with the left, right? But yeah, other than that, now notice I did insert comments, okay? Because I wanted to keep this a little bit more concise. But Yeah, so when you do the header, yeah, it should be in upper right, so the student's doing that right, but you should have the page number, right? So. Now, technically, okay, so the essay is actually 2¼ pages. Okay, this is second page. Now, the third page, the only reason why it's more like 2½-ish, it's because I inserted comments, but if you took my comments out, this would be 2¼ okay? So that would mean that I would say, now I did say great potential is a B. Okay, if the student kept doing what they were doing, I could kind of see giving this a reasonable B. But it's 2¼ pages, without the comment inserts. So, so actually you drop it 3 places, right? Because you drop it 1 place for every quarter of a page that it's off. So that would mean B minus, C plus, C. So it drops down to a C. So let's take a look at what's going on here. First of all, let's look at the citation. Okay. All right, so now obviously, yeah, it should be up here, and it was up here, but just because I inserted comments, it just kind of brought it down here. But so the works cited, okay, it is in alphabetical order. The information is fine. Okay. Okay, so yeah, here the period should be there. Yeah, so for some reason the student decided not to put, periods. Also, this seems incomplete, like the information is incomplete here. And yeah, so be careful with the source where the information is incomplete. It seems like it's October. Okay, I think that's the date of publication. Then why are you repeating the October? Is that maybe date of access? Then you should complete with the day and the year. Also, technically, the 7 should be here. You should aim for abbreviation. Also, if you're taking this, it's probably from an online site. So this should have the URL, right? Also, the title mechanics are incorrect, right? Like this, de-italicize that, just have that in quotes. This should be italicized. Take the italics out. Quotes are fine. But yeah, where's the larger container title? Is this from a book? Is this from a website? What's going on here? So that should be here. So again, information is incomplete. So here, I guess the student may be cited from the Kelly Mays chapter. So, and if you do that, you should have a listing for Kelly Mays. Most of this is fine. It's you need to have the period here. Take the quotes out. This is a book title. Yeah, okay. And also the hanging indents, right? Tab that. Tab this. Okay. So as you see, there's, just with the citation, there's quite a few things wrong with it. And it's not really the minor errors that the A+ guy was making. So let's see here. So I'm still looking at citation. Okay, so poem is in quotes. See, like here in the parenthetical, you just want to put Gleg, right? You don't put the first name, just the last name. Okay, Saturday's child should be in quotes. Also, like here, you notice how the A+ guy was citing the lines. So yeah, you should have the parenthetical where you put in parentheses, like lines, blah blah blah, or line, and then put the line number. Okay. Yeah, see again, so you have a quote, you have what is like signal phrasing, but you need to have the parenthetical citation. So in parentheses, what the student should put is N PAG. Okay, that's what you should have. Just frame it. You got to frame it, right? Yeah. So you see here, guys, how there are errors here. I would say, the kind of sum total of it comes across as more major errors than the A+ guy. And okay, so far the deficits are citation formatting errors and also, you know, it's under page length. Now I start reading it. Okay, let's see. Unprivileged, all right, prior to Harlem Renaissance. Special era, okay. Okay, I think, you know, this is pretty solid. I think this is actually pretty solid stuff. Like I said, I mean, the great potential, if page length was an issue, would probably have been a B, you know, I could see giving it a B. If the student had continued to develop the ideas. But yeah, I mean, good word choices, you know, yeah, good. Okay, and then basically referencing a significant figure from the past, okay, so that's some nice specificity there. So basically, the past is being set up, talking about issues like, you know, like these sorts of issues, maybe the relationship between these, and then talking about present day, okay, and referencing a contemporary source. All right. Okay, killing of George Floyd. Okay. So my question, yeah, so it sets up the case of George Floyd, right? And the circumstances, okay, and what that led to. Now, see, but the way that it ends, see, my question is, so what you see, what the student needed to do was at the end, like right here, the student needed to have a clear thesis statement that compared and contrasted the issues that are the issue that County Cullen, I mean, a specific poem is never really referenced here, but an issue that County Cullen was addressing, maybe regarding notions of systemic racism and the existence or not of it, or maybe notions of self-determination and pride as you know, in regards to what though? In regards to like professional success. So yeah, it's just the issue itself. I think what I see here is there is good potential, you know, for certain issues being zeroed in on, or a certain issue being zeroed in on, but it just feels like there are issues being introduced, but it's like, well, what is your specific focus? So that's why I say focus purpose, policing and excessive force, for privilege and systemic racism, the connection between the two. What exactly is your focus? I needed to be more clear. You see how with the A, okay, yeah, like with the A paper, once we get to the end of the intro and the thesis, let's see here. See, like that is like super clear, like the comparison between present and past. And, you know, it's all brought together and the issue is very specific. So that's what was needed here. Yeah, so I would say that the setup of past and present is fairly solid, but just kind of in the end, in the thesis statement, bringing it all together is just kind of vague, really. And okay, still in a way treated like they were back then. Okay, so here we're getting into some poetry analysis. Okay, misfortune due to poverty. Okay. Yeah, like does maybe is there maybe a correlation that can be made between relationship with law enforcement and maybe struggling with poverty, you know? So that could be clear. Cause them to have a much harder life. Right. So the invoking of maybe impoverished conditions and the significance of the use of the word black, and then the use of these words. Okay, so I would say, you know, a reasonable job. I would say a reasonable job of analyzing. So I said, you know, good language analysis. Notice I didn't say excellent. I said, but you know, it's decent. I think the problem is because I think a specific anchor in the thesis statement hasn't been set up. So I think that kind of impacts you know, just as far as like, well, what is this all, you know, in the grand scheme of things supposed to be in development of? You know, I think that could be a little bit clearer from the get-go. So it does suffer a little bit from that, but I think just taken in a vacuum, you know, it's a reasonable job, I would say, of doing the language analysis type stuff. So I said further address different aspects. Yeah, see, the thing is, again, unlike the A+ paper, here it really just devotes one paragraph, you know, to analyzing the poem, and then it moves on to looking at the contemporary angle. But in total, there's only 2 body paragraphs, and then you have the conclusion. So the discussion is quite brief, right? And it definitely would develop with more diversified body paragraphs, you know, analyzing different aspects of the poem. You see how like the A+ paper did that so well. And yeah, and then like when you're talking about present day, okay, so we've got a quote here. Yeah, again, like POV, okay, get that POV out of there. You know, I say that again here, like the use of the I, the we. I mean, in fairness, the A+ paper never uses I, but kind of makes the mistake that students sometimes make of, well, I'm defaulting to speaking universally, so I'm going to use you or we. Don't do that. Just keep it third person. So in this case, yeah, let's keep it third person here. One individual enjoys the privileges. Yeah, so it definitely seems like probably an interesting thematic anchor could have been making a point about the African American community and their relationship with societal privileges, maybe, you know, but it would be good to focus on a certain kind of privilege. Maybe, I mean, the whole law enforcement, maybe are, you know, do white people enjoy more of a privilege when it comes to relationship with law enforcement than, you know, the Black members of society? You know, that, okay, that could have been interesting. But again, so there's potential there. There's potential, and that's why I said, I do see great potential to be, but it's just, you know, it's undercooked, right? It's underdeveloped. Yeah, I mean, the individual observations are not bad. And also, I would say, aside from like the POV shifting at times, I think the writing in general is reasonably clean, you know, reasonably clean. Yeah, see, like here, like I say, I mean, don't just speak in general, like develop with evidence. Give me evidence, cite sources. Again, what the A+ paper did so well. Yeah, and again, right. So I had already made that comment that, yeah, just only 2 body paragraphs. Really? That's all you're giving me? See, you know, you want to have at least 3 body paragraphs, right? Intro, 3 body conclusion, but that's a minimum. Again, you see the A+ paper totally stretches beyond what is minimally asked of a student to create more diversified body points. But you want to have at least 3 to show some sort of a pattern. You know, if you just have 1 body point, 2 body point, conclusion, that's not really showing a pattern. Yeah, so yeah, okay. See, I think again, the conclusion, it's okay. Again, it's a little bit general. So I said, keep the, yeah, see, to make it less general, the student could have kept the focus on policing as a type of systemic racism using the Floyd case. Again, anchor back to that Floyd case, which is really not discussed that much. I mean, it's just kind of mentioned here, but it's not really analyzed. So that's definitely what was needed. So again, you know, great potential, potentially B, I could see that, but yeah, you know, I mean, it's a C. Now, the reason why it's not a D or an F is because the student does show a general understanding of the assignment of comparing past and present. It's just the purpose, the focus purpose itself is very general. The student does engage in poetry analysis. The student does utilize a contemporary source for some sort of corroboration. Of course, that could be developed more, but yeah, so you do have those elements. So that's why I did it. And there was no plagiarism. Also, there was no plagiarism. So I think a D or an F would be a little bit harsh for what the student is doing. And yeah, so I would say this is pretty cookie cutter, C paper, all right, guys. So there you have that. Yeah, all right. So hopefully that's helpful for you. And I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. Let's try to get that A, okay? But yeah, just take to heart what I'm pointing out and use that to your advantage. All right, guys, take care. Good luck.